Professor Pierre Noro from Sciences Po Paris. Pierre is also the ambassador of labXchange. We will be having a training on labXchange on Monday from 9 to 11. The training will be delivered by Pierre and by our dear colleague Andrew Minor also from labXchange. So we thought of giving this presentation on the labXchange initiative that we are inviting you to be on, producing and posting your resources, as Alexandria University will be having a presence on the platform very soon. And in the meantime, using the resources and virtual labs available over labXchange. So Pierre will be proceeding with a presentation today, but all those who have registered already and have been nominated by their faculties to attend the training will be there with us next Monday from 9 to 11. I thank you very much. The day you're starting the day, Pierre, but it has been very long for us. So I would kindly ask you to start your presentation, which is scheduled for 25 minutes on our timetable of today. And I thank you again for accepting my invitation. Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hada. I will try to keep it short then, to not overburden you. It's a pleasure to be here. So hi everyone, my name is Pierre. Hada already introduced me, so I don't think it's really necessary that I go over it again. Let me tell you a little bit about labXchange. What do we do at labXchange, especially what are the main goals that led to the creation of this platform 2 years ago. And let me share with you a couple of the insights, a couple of the thinking process that we are going through while thinking about the role that a platform such as labXchange can play in the internationalization of pedagogical content, but also in the fostering of a more inclusive, a more diverse science education and science world in general. So just to rehash that, the few goals that we have today is just, you know, I will explain you how labXchange works, and especially how does it address gaps in access and equity in science education at a global scale. We'll also I will tell you about how, you know, content is organized on labXchange. How can you explore and have a differentiated learning, remote learning experience. We'll also identify leads of professional development and implementation of the resource, and finally discuss how what are the main challenges that pertain to open online education, and especially how can we tackle those challenges to foster a new generation of scientists. Okay, so let me start with that little statement. Every one of us, thanks to COVID, have had to deal either as a learner or as a teacher with online education. And I think we can all say that some of it is great and some of it really sucks. Some of it is really difficult to do. Why? Because science is fundamentally an act of experience-based learning. And so when you go on, you know, even before going online, when you need to teach science or learn science, well, you need some equipment, right? You need some labs, you need some materials, you need some experts, some people to help you lead that experience. It takes time. Those experiments require the right pedagogical framework, and they are hard to implement remotely. And on the other hand, online science learning, but I could say online learning in general, is very vertical and insufficiently interactive. This leads to passive learning experiences that most of the time are less fruitful than on-premise in-person learning, to online pedagogical resources that are very hard to navigate because they are really fuzzy and most of the time they share all the same format, or So yeah, there were a couple of challenges with traditional science learning and with online science learning in particular that we wanted to tackle. And so we envisioned labXchange to be a platform to support online science learning and teaching on both sides, right? We wanted it to welcome a diverse and inclusive community of learners, of teachers, of researchers, and to recreate a collaboration space for all of those science world stakeholders coming from all around the globe. And finally, it was really important that this tool would be free now and forever, thanks to the financial support of the MGen Foundation. Okay, so that is labXchange. I swear that I could give you a little bit of a tour, and we will see perhaps at the end if I still have some time. But since we have a full workshop of an hour that will be dedicated to getting, to playing around with the platform, I'm just gonna do a very high level overview of what can we do with labXchange. Okay, but if I get a little bit more time at the end, we will perhaps jump in and play around with a couple of simulations just to give you a primer of what you will get to experience on Monday. So labXchange is really a place when we wanted to reimagine how to teach science, to teach online science learning and teaching. So we create where we want to foster new opportunities for deeper, more authentic engagement with the process of science, and especially with getting familiar with labs and the scientific method as a whole, since it's really a core part of learning science, where we wanted also to just create new connections between learners all around the globe and innovative pedagogical materials, innovative ways to learn science, and finally to bring together diverse voices. And this is really important, to spotlight diversity, both in science education, but in science as a whole, because there is a strong problem of representation in the world of science that is sometimes very centralized, on Western Europe and North America. Perhaps we should add now also Eastern Asia, but with very oftentimes, a strong concentration of the visibility around not very diverse group of people. So what can you do on labXchange? Well, you can explore plenty of topics and resources in the life science. Most importantly, you can design and share learning experience or pathways with each other, with a class of students, or you can share it publicly, or you can keep it for yourself, just to build, a new class, for instance, that you would build, or share it with just one student in case you're mentoring the students on a specific topic. You can discuss innovation in science and education, since it's really a collaborative platform, and we have some social collaboration tools that are implemented on it. You can apply science to real-world issues through our experimentations. You can develop your professional skills. You can become a mentor or be mentored if that's what you need, and you can really feel empowered about your place in the science world, and so much more. So I will come back. I will perhaps come back to that. This is the time that will be dedicated to exploring a little bit the platform that we will see on Monday. So let me tell you a little bit more about the contextualization of open education resources, and why do I want to insist on this? Like, why is it so important? Robert Liu, who left us, unfortunately, last year, really wanted, so he was the founder of Harvard X, one of its first pedagogical directors, so one of the very pioneer of the massively open online courses, the MOOCs movement in Harvard then, at the global scale, since he was one of the initiators of edX, the federated platforms of MOOCs, that is open source, that works on open source infrastructure. And so Rob used to say that really labXchange was all about creating a world with equal opportunity for success in science for anyone, anywhere. And this really comes from this vision is rooted in different realities. The first one is that when it comes to accessing open educational resources related to science, well, the landscapes of open educated resources and of, you know, online education is extremely fragmented. You have many different platforms, many different projects that coexist, that are gathered or isolated, you know. But when you navigate this, it's a mess. It's very difficult. You need to go into many different places. Those contents, they are often created with different formats on different topics. They address different levels of education. They reflect different approaches, philosophies, and pedagogies. And so it's very difficult to navigate them because there is no standard. There are no ways to facilitate this navigation. It's really heterogeneous as a teaching experience or a learning experience. And so in order to get it right, we all need to encourage the adoption of rich and innovative pedagogical content without creating new barriers to access. And this proves to be actually more difficult than we thought, and I will share it with you as we reflect on the 2 first years of labXchange. So in the case of labXchange, just to give you a couple of numbers to understand where we stand right now. So labXchange, it's more than 10,000 freely accessible pedagogical resources. They are primarily in English, although we have done translated efforts to translate at least 100 of them in 12 different languages. And there are a couple of resources that are natively in a non-English language. So for now, it's mostly in Spanish. We have a couple of Chinese also written pedagogical resources that are that are natively in Chinese and perhaps not translated in English. But for now, the book, like the wide majority, is in English, and I mean, it's already a form of bias when you think about it. It's great for accessibility since English, you know, it's such a widely, you know, the lingua franca a little bit, but in the same time, for all of the learners that either do not know English or do not feel comfortable with learning English, because sometimes you can speak fluently a language, but learning is a demanding experience. So this focus, this centricity of English can become a little bit of an issue as well. And finally, we realized through labXchange that even using experience-based learning, so things that should be objective, you know, things that are rooted in the scientific method, sometimes are not enough to raise inequalities in science learning. And for that, I think especially working with a simulation that is supposed to help you learn, for instance, how to use a micropipette in a lab. Well, I mean, that's really great for people who've never used it, or for people who've already used one in the lab, you know, to get a refresher using a tiny online software around a little gamified pedagogical experience. But at the same time, the truth is that if you've never held one of these, it can, you know, it can become very abstract, right? Like you can't really say that online learning will replace totally the experience of being in a lab and doing an experiment yourself, especially when it comes to science learning, in which learning to think as a scientist, to go to the lab, create new experiments, to objectify and make sure that your assumptions and hypotheses are right or wrong, is such a core part of science that even making interactive pedagogical resources might not be enough to really recover from the inequalities between the students that have access to fully furnished labs with professional and with trained professionals. Sorry about that. In comparison with students who come from you know, more poorer areas and who access classes that might not have access to lab equipment, or that might not have trained professionals to help them, to walk them through those pedagogical experience. So all of that to say that open education resources is not the silver bullet for online education, and especially it will not be that if we do not have a tremendous effort to facilitate, to really onboard those students that come from underrepresented or poorer classes, poorer social backgrounds. We really need to properly contextualize their learning experience in order to maximize their ability to feel empowered and feel legitimate to pursue a career in science. Now, a couple of answers that we try to use to tackle the challenges that I have identified. So we try to federate as much content as possible in one place, right? But following the FAIR principle, which is that all of our resources should be easily findable, should be accessible, should be interoperable, and you can reuse them. And by reusing them, what do I mean? Well, every teacher or learner who has an account on labXchange can, for free, combine and remix resources, have them integrated in pedagogical pathways that are contextualized to answer the learner's need, but also they can annotate, they can commentate, they can remix all of this content and make it always more accessible for them and for others. And all of this takes a big part in our vision and our commitment to respect and give proper visibility to every content creator. So that is why we set up those new collaborative working tools that I just listed to really facilitate this contextualization of resources. We don't want these resources to just fly around and learners to have to be hit in the face with videos that were perhaps not meant for them, or that were that are insufficiently targeted for them to really get away, to really get the actual learning that comes out of them. We also translate our resources, and so as I told you, we've translated some in 12 languages. There's a 13 language, and that is coming soon, so which is the isiZulu, which will also join. Among the 12 languages, there is Arabic, actually. So, and I think it's extremely important for, the North African and Middle Eastern, and also part of Sub-Saharan Africa, to be able to offer some of those resources in a language that is as prevalent and as important for the history of science as Arabic. And finally, we try to spur the development of an inclusive community by really highlighting diversity in the world of science. And we do that through career profiles. So we do that through the pedagogical resources that might be created by those underrepresented minorities in the world of science. But we also have dedicated science stories that are really meant for students who are part of underrepresented minorities to see that others came before and succeeded in the world of science, and are perfectly legitimate to pursue a career in the world of science. And I mean, you all know that having proper figures and goals to inspire you can really be a game changer in the experience of the students. Okay, I'm actually running a little bit late as usual, so I'm gonna go really fast on the slides. But just saying, so the slides are meant to show the inequalities in the world of STEM. Unfortunately, they're mainly about the US because it's where the most data I could find the most data. But obviously, there are some gender inequalities in the world of STEM. It's like STEM, the STEM fields are the only places in which women are, still lag behind male in graduation rates, but also in, in access to professional positions. And of course, there are some racial biases, especially in the US, where science is the only, STEMs are the only fields in which students that come from a Latino background or Black students are more likely to drop out of college. And finally, of course, the teachers in middle schools that are less rich obviously say declare that they have less access to the proper resources to teach science. COVID-19 gave us a worldwide, benchmark also for online learning, and we know that online learning has led to an increased level of drop rate. And so this time for France, moving all of the classes online, and just in the year of 2020, led to at least 5 to 8% of all of the learners to drop out at some point during the year. And by drop out, those are the figures of the Ministry of Education, so you can also expect that they might be a little bit underestimated. So it's really huge. And so that's really why it's important to use those online resources to break the monotony, the verticality, and the passivity that comes with online learning. It's also important to use them to enable teachers to reclaim experience-based pedagogy in the learning process of their students, even if they cannot access those expensive lab equipments that I was talking about earlier. And finally, the educational resources that we're talking about offer a common ground for the learners to acquire the minimal know-how that is required for them to really learning and feel at ease with the scientific method, and to let them feel empowered. Which leads me to the conclusion. Yeah, it's the final slide. I'm going to be right in time. And this is really important. This is something that I've tried to voice a lot as an ambassador within labXchange, is that although it is really a difficult task, I think that open educational resources have the potential to provide a new path to science education and to the internationalization of science education by giving an equal access to highly innovative pedagogical concepts. However, platforms have a very central, critical role to play in being able to spotlight, to give the proper visibility to the diversity in open educational resources in order to prevent a new visibility bias, a bias in which only the most wealthy institutions, research institutions or universities that are able to invest a lot of money in the production of pedagogical resources would be represented. And as a platform that is hosted by Harvard University, we need to be really conscious about that. Pedagogical resources that might that are created all around the world, but that might not have benefited from a strong financial support, that might not be as technically advanced, they have an extremely important value to prevent to prevent the simplification of the open education realm. We don't want it to revolve only around a couple of very wealthy West European and North American universities. Otherwise, it makes no sense, right? And we don't want internationalization to become a way to simplify and to overlook or to invisibilize the work of universities all around the globe, with, such as the University of Alexandria, with so many great educators working so hard to create pedagogical resources. And that is why we're so glad to have to count now OER Wiki at MENA as one of our partners, because there are plenty of terrific, and I really mean it, really very high value added pedagogical resources that are on this platform, and that deserve more visibility, that deserve to be as easy to research for students and learners around the globe, as easy to find as the resources that we produced at labXchange with the funding and the scientific personnel of Harvard. Because perhaps for a student that is in Tunisia or in Egypt or in any place in the world, really, who wants to tackle a topic in Arabic, or who wants to learn actually what an Egyptian professor, how an Egyptian professor would present a certain topic, then it becomes extremely valuable that the resources that this person can access is not just, you know, the resources that comes from Harvard, but are the resources that comes from Harvard, but also the university that comes from University of Alexandria or the University of Tunis. Sorry, I'm taking the two examples, but it's because I've had the pleasure to interact a lot with Khada and Lilia from University of Tunis about those issues. Now, moving on and just wrapping up, we are really committed to promote content coming from partners all around the world, and I think it's the only condition that will allow us to successfully fight against biases in the world of science by connecting the learner through resources and through mentorship with insufficiently visible, underrepresented science professionals who really change, you know, the way we tackle science. I forgot to translate that slide, but I'm pretty much done. So once again, thank you very much, Khada, for your invitation and for making me discover Wiki at MENA. Sorry, Lilia, if you're there. I forgot you work for the University of Sousse and the University of Tunis, although we love them as well. And yeah, please feel free if you have any question, if you want to reach out.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you very much.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I look forward to present you labXchange on Monday. I'm done, Khada. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. In fact, Pierre, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. I have reserved complete 2 hours for you. The time slot is yours from 9 to 11, so that you can explore labXchange with Pierre as much as he can present and answer your questions, because I think that would be some questions based on the different specialities. However, if Pierre wanted to be with us today as just to present for this workshop, and like as the title suggests, teaching with labXchange. If you would like to ask Pierre any question now, please raise your hand. If you would like to keep your questions for Monday in the workshop, so it's your decision. And we'll be waiting for 2 more minutes. If you have questions, then you can kindly answer them, Pierre. Otherwise, we meet on Monday. So let me check the list. Let me check the hands.
Well, it looks like everyone is too tired to ask questions, especially after my talk and this great day of talks at APITEL.
I Monday there would not be problem speaking with a bit of a loud voice, since it will be a weekday. And I thank you again, Pierre. I know it's too early on a Saturday. But I hope the Monday session will be fruitful for all. I'm very much looking forward to it. I thank you each and every one here present today with us. It was a very, very, very long day. We started with more than the double of this number of attendees, but I thank you for just staying with us until the end. And see you on Monday, Pierre, and see you everyone on Monday. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marwa, for being there.